think it would be good to start with if you could outline a little bit of your career for someone who may be unfamiliar with you. Obviously, you've served in New Hampshire for decades now.
Sure.
But just if you could share a little bit about yourself and your career and how it led you to become involved with
Sure.
the Youth Development Center.
I'd be happy to. I moved to New Hampshire in 1972. I was a civil trial lawyer for 22 years. I love that. Absolutely loved it. And then I was asked by the then governor to become a member of the Supreme Court. And I had no interest in becoming a judge, but I knew it wouldn't be twice offered. So I took it, and I loved my time on the Supreme Court. And for 7 of those 15 years, I was Chief Justice. I could have stayed on for another 7 if I wanted, but I missed parts of my former life. Then I got an opportunity to serve as Dean of the Law School at UNH, which was a great honor, and I loved my time there. And then I went to work for Dartmouth Health because I was very interested in mental health advocacy. My family had its own tragedy, which was very public here. Thank God we recovered from that. And so I spent the last 8 or 9 years doing that. I traveled 120,000 miles, been to 370 schools, talking to kids and parents. And I was offered this opportunity by the Attorney General and all the lawyers for the claimants to become the administrator of the YDC Claims Fund. And I think they were interested in my doing that because of my trial law experience, my time as Chief Justice, and maybe even more especially my commitment to mental health awareness. And so I knew I'd be dealing with folks with mental health issues, and I was right about that.
And at the time that you were introduced to that role, how was it explained to you to be the administrator of this fund?
I was told by the Attorney General when I met with him for about 2 hours with another lawyer from his office that I would be recommended by him and the claimants' lawyers to the Supreme Court. Under the statute, everyone thought it was good to have an administrator that wasn't appointed by the Attorney General. So he said, you'll be appointed by the Supreme Court if they agree with us, and you will serve there basically until this is over, and you'll be protected with a for good cause provision. In other words, nobody can replace you unless they have a good cause. And I'd been on the Supreme Court for 15 years, and I had lifetime tenure. And I understood well when you are making hard calls, especially when you're giving away state money, nice to know that you can make tough calls. And so I took the job under that understanding. I had to assemble the staff. I had to create the office. They gave me a paper statute. So we created a 3-dimensional process. We had to get technology. We created hearing teams. I had former Superior Court Judge Diane Nicolosi, well respected as the second hearings team leader. I hired 2 social workers. They're supposed to be trauma-informed and victim-centered. I took that very seriously. I hired 2 outstanding people. I just can't tell you how much I admire them and how much I've learned from them. And so we got going. We started this operation in a 12 by 14 closet with no windows, because that's what they gave us. And I had Peggy Haskett, who's been with me forever. She's been a special assistant to every chief going back to John King. She's really competent. And as we grew, we needed more space. And then we started holding hearings. And my eyes were so opened by that era.
And what was the fund, as you became familiar, as it was introduced to you, what did the Attorney General tell you the point of the fund was, the goal of the fund?
Well, he said publicly it was the right thing to do, and he was correct about that. By the time they created the fund, I think it's important for people to realize there were hundreds of lawsuits that had been filed in the Superior Court by people who said they were abused. And so they knew that wasn't a successful formula. That could cost the state a lot of money in defense costs, in jury verdicts, and bad press. As it was, the state had indicted 11 people for the very abuse that these kids were suing over. So they finally said, look, why don't we do this? We'll create an administrative fund. It will be trauma-informed and victim-centered. We'll have an independent, neutral, yours truly as it turned out, appointed by the Supreme Court, so we don't have our hand on the scale. And he will be like an arbitrator. He can hear these cases and he can make a decision. And if you, the claimant, after those hearings, agree, then the case is over. And if you don't agree, you can go back to the Superior Court and have your case tried there. But they knew, and I knew, as a trial lawyer and as a judge, it's going to take years and years. So these people had been through a lot, and they wanted closure. But at least they knew the person they would be talking to, as it turned out it was me, wasn't acting in fear or favor. I did what I thought the statute required. And I say that to you today. I'm really proud of my time and my service, and I'm just sorry it's been interrupted like this.
And we're going to get to that, but I want you to lay out, obviously you're limited in how much you can share about the stories that you've heard in these cases because of privacy concerns. But I think it's important for the public to know a little bit about what you heard while you're sitting in those rooms listening to these victims.
Sure, and I'm sensitive to the privacy, but I also think it's public money, and without violating confidences, if people were sitting in those rooms with me, and this is New Hampshire, you'd say, oh, come on, it couldn't happen. Not that. Maybe that happens in Los Angeles. No, it happened here. It happened here for a half a century. The youngest person I've spoken to in those rooms is 19. He was abused in 2017, 2018. The oldest person I've spoken to was 78. He was abused in the late 1960s. There are a number of pedophiles who worked there. Not everyone was a pedophile, obviously, but there was an inordinate number of them. And these kids were often broken before they came there. They came from backgrounds that you wonder how they survived. And they were truant, or they got in small problems, and they went there. And then they were basically locked in. They were in cells. They had a little cot. They had no bathroom. Some of these kids had to go to the bathroom in their rooms. Some of them had to defecate in the rooms because nobody would open the door for them. Some of these kids were anally raped, orally raped, fondled, beaten. It is stunning. And after a while, you hear the same names from the same people who are doing that work. You know their MO by that point. And I've thought many times, I think it's important people know this. I grew up in a middle-class home with a mother and father who loved me. And I sit in those rooms with some of these people who might have tattoos everywhere. They might have been in jail. They might have been addicts. And I listen to their stories, their early life. I read about it. Then they share it with us. And I think, you know, if I had your home, I might be where you are. If you had my mom and dad, you'd probably sit in here asking questions. It is very humbling to be there. And it made me angry every single time. And I want to give the state credit. What they created, this statutory scheme, ingenious and fair. That's why the Attorney General said it was the right thing to do. The state in the statute said, we'll let you recover for these types of abuse, and each of those types of abuse can be valued at X dollars. And then we'll give you the worksheets to figure out what you just did. I wasn't a freelancer. I couldn't just give you money. I had to follow the rules. But I had to find out, Ariel, the hardest part of the job was, what can I accept? This person is looking back 20 years through the fog of trauma. How much of what they say can I, it's not that whether they're lying or not, but I need something. I'm not an ATM machine. And I took the job very seriously. I had these trauma-informed people who were phenomenal, had a lot of experience in this area. And so the state had a lot of control as it was. And it was working well. The Attorney General, by the way, said publicly more than once, this should be a $500 million problem. The head of Division I Finance said, actually, it could be as high as $750 million. The legislature said, we're going to put $75 million a year into this fund every year through fiscal year 2032. So did they know it was a big ticket item? Yes, they did. When you abuse kids for half a century, it's expensive, and they knew that. And the reason they wanted the claims in this system is you wouldn't read about them. You wouldn't see the press. and they were controlling how much you could get. There's been one jury verdict in our state involving one gentleman who didn't come into the fund. A jury who knows none of what I know gave him $38 million. The most you could get in the fund the legislature created, the most was $2.5 million, and we only awarded that 3 times. The cap for most people would be $1.5 million. We issued some awards for $3,000, some were $17,000, some were $112,000. Not everyone became a millionaire. And so I kept thinking the state failed these kids for half a century, but finally, they're doing the right thing the right way.
And that was David Meehan, of course, which was a huge case. But as you're sitting in that room, what does that look like? And you're talking to these victims, you have your trauma-informed lawyers. What does that conversation look like to know if what they're saying is legitimate? Because we've heard critics, from lawmakers to everyday people, say, how do we know that these people are telling the truth? There are upwards of 2,000 people who say that they have been abused in these places. How do you know that they're really telling the truth?
You don't. In an absolute sense, you don't. How does anyone know whether someone talking to you is telling you the truth? But I will say this, if they were lying, they have to fill out claim forms, multiple pages. They sign them under oath. And then when they testify before each of our hearings, somebody swears them in. So now I've been sworn in twice. If the Attorney General, who watches all these hearings, they read everything I read, have they prosecuted anybody? The Attorney General's office? I bet they haven't. You might want to check with them. I don't think the legislature in our state, who value the dollar bill as much as any legislature in the country, put $75 million a year. That was a promise till 2032 because they thought these people were lying. I mean, it's preposterous. Could somebody lie? Yes. You know, I said earlier along, some of the people who come before us, a small percentage, will be lying to us and we won't realize it. That's the risk of doing business. Some of these people will under-remember what happened to them and they've got less money than they should have. And some people might over-remember, not because they mean to, but trauma does that. I've said from day one, this is imperfect. As imperfect as it is, it's better than going in front of a jury, asking people who you abused. Think about that. To stand up in a public courtroom and say, let me tell you about my anal rapes, and then be cross-examined, are you sure? Who was? That is cruel. And so I didn't create the system. I'm just asking the legislature and the governor to keep the system you promised. And the changes they made to it, Ariel, I've been in the justice business basically my whole adult life. I was a trial lawyer for 30 years. I was on the Supreme Court. I was dean of the law school. I know what justice looks like. And I think at this point in my life, I know what it doesn't look like. And they've taken a system that I think was really ingeniously designed and fair to everyone, to them, save them money and publicity, and they could budget for that. How do you budget for big jury verdicts? You don't know. To a system where they now control all of it. So that in a way that people might understand what they've created, the defendant state did the abuse.
Yeah, let's walk that through because so we understand from the late spring, early summer that now there has been a change in how the Youth Development Center Settlement Fund is being run. You were running it rather as an independent entity of sorts, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then earlier this spring, the governor and the state legislature made a change to make that position a political appointee. What does that mean?
That means that whoever the administrator is now, he or she can issue awards, but if the governor doesn't like them, you're gone. No reason, any reason. If the Attorney General doesn't like the awards you give, the Attorney General can veto it. So I think it's important people understand, if you were going to trial and you were a plaintiff in a case where you were abused and you were suing the person who abused you, before the trial starts, the person who abused you stands up and says, excuse me, before we start, A couple of housekeeping matters. If I don't like what the judge is doing during the trial, I'm going to replace you, just so you're on notice. And if the jury comes back and gives you a big verdict, and I don't think that's appropriate, you won't be getting it. Nobody in America would say that was fair. The state now controls 100% of what happens. Do you think, the state, by the way, wanted all these claimants to come into the system. They enticed them to come in. They amended the statutes to get them in. They asked the lawyers for most of the claimants to commit in writing that if they made those changes, they recommended their clients they come in, and they have come in by the hundreds from this very court. You realize what it would cost the state to try those cases?
Explain that. Why, what is the interest to put them in the settlement fund rather than this all go to trial?
Well, you mentioned Mr. Meehan, he got $38 million. And I don't know what the legal bill was for the state to defend that case. The state settled 2 cases, very public, that never came into the fund. These were people who claimed they were abused in YDC facilities. 2 cases for $14.5 million, 1 jury verdict for $38 million. By the end of June of this year, the process that I've been overseeing has resolved with settlements by the AG and our office and hearings about 386 cases.
You've resolved.
Yes, and that costs us.
And what does that mean?
That means they're gone. They accepted the results and they're out of this very court. Cases are over.
So does that mean they were awarded money? Does that mean
yes,
that
they're awarded money.
So 386 people have been awarded some sum of money?
Yes. The average award is $543,000. The 2 settlements the AG did, $14.5 million. The Meehan case was $38 million before you add $10 million in interest. And so you might ask, and I did ask the Senate Finance Chairman one day, because it made no sense to me, the governor put in no money. She's the reason, by the way, that we're here today. She put in no money. The legislature committed those funds. These people had a right to rely on that good faith. She didn't want to fund it. And I think it's important for the people to know, I've been around for a while, so this is my first rodeo. Starting in March of this year, the Attorney General had been a big proponent of the fund. He deserved credit for that. He wouldn't come with me anymore to talk about the fund. He wouldn't recommend any money for it. He said to me, if you testify for more money, I'll testify against it. And by the way, he said, the reason we might not have money is you're not paying the lawyers over the same number of years as the claimants. I didn't have authority to do that. I said, give me a directive, I'll do it, General. I told you that last fall, he never wrote me. But he did tell a member of the state legislature when she asked him that he never wrote me anything because he knew he didn't have that authority and the lawyers would sue him. I was... In
regard to you paying the lawyers working for you overtime.
The lawyers...
And what was that about?
The lawyers...
Why did that come up?
I don't know, you have to ask the Attorney General. I think they were looking for an excuse to kill it. They wanted the fund gone. They wanted to find irregularities. I didn't have authority to do that. And when they did the auditors agreed with me. He didn't have authority to do that, and he knew that. And when he was talking to a member of the state Senate, she asked him why he didn't send me the directive so I would pay these lawyers all the time. He said, I didn't have that authority, and they would sue me.
Well, but that's a big accusation that the state would want to kill the fund. In your opinion, where does that come from, and why would they want to do that?
Let me explain why they would want to do it. They don't want to kill it because they don't want to own it. They say, if you killed it, that was really bad. It's hard to explain. I was meeting with the Senate Finance Chairman, Senator Gray, probably in April, and I said, Senator, maybe you can help me understand this. 3 cases have been resolved outside the fund, almost $60 million, and I think we'll have 380 cases resolved for about $165 million by the end of June. The governor's a bright person, she's a lawyer. Why wouldn't she understand that killing the fund makes no sense and sending all these people back to jury trials? And he leaned forward, across the table, he smiled. He said, well, I suppose she could be thinking, it'll take a long time for those cases to come to trial. I won't be governor then. I said, that doesn't make me feel very good. I think the people of the state need to know where New Hampshire has come. In April, late April, I received a call from a Senate Finance Chairman on a Friday. I wasn't expecting it, and he said, I need to speak to you. So he called me at 11 o'clock. He said, Judge, I'm not calling for myself, but I am calling for a couple of my colleagues. And if you were to step aside, I think there could be more money for the fund. I'd never received a call like that in my life. And I said to him, why would I do that? I haven't done anything wrong. He said, no, you haven't, Judge. He said, but you've talked about your staff and you respect them. Maybe there'd be some more money for your staff if you stepped aside. I'd never received a call like that. And I said, Senator, I've done nothing wrong. I'm proud of our work. I'm not stepping aside. Before a hearing in the legislature that I attended, I went into executive session area. This would have been in March. Before we went in, this was a public meeting, a motion was made. This is a joint fiscal committee. Mr. Chairman, I move that we go into executive session for reputational reasons. Whose reputation do you think they were talking about? A couple months later, I'm in front of the joint fiscal, and they asked us to come over and report to them. And I went over. It was on the agenda, number one on the agenda. It was a public meeting. And we were waiting, and then a fellow from the LBA, Legislative Budget Group, came over and said, Judge, they're not going to hear you today. I said, what do you mean, they're not going to hear me? They asked me to come. I don't know, but they're not going to hear you. So we left. 20 minutes later, 25 minutes later, I got a call from a lawyer who was in the room. He said, did you hear what happened after you left? I said, no, what happened? He said, Senator Carson, Senate President, who described me, by the way, not in a public meeting, but in a private meeting, as an elitist Democrat and a moralistic egomaniac. I don't even know her. But at this public meeting, after we were gone, she said, I don't know what's going on at the YDC Claims Office, that's our office. We're spending taxpayer money. None of what they're doing makes sense. I think we need an immediate audit. I got a call that night from Channel 9. They wanted a statement. I know what she was saying. They did an audit. It's the best audit I think they've ever seen. They made no recommendations. They made no criticisms. And I met with the auditors that were sent over, experienced, good people. They said, you know, when we first looked at this and before we came, we read your 9 quarterly reports. And we said to one another, what are we going over there for? It's all here. The auditors found that my office had complied with all statutes, all guidelines, that I didn't have the authority to pay lawyers overtime. And you never heard them talk about it again. And the reason they need to get rid of me, and they had ran out of options. They couldn't blame me or shame me or bribe me. I wasn't going. And finally, at the last minute, the 11th hour, the end of June, Senate Finance had a hearing, and there was a motion made to amend the statute slightly to eliminate the Supreme Court as the appointing authority and give it to the governor. And the new person would not have a for-cause protection. They could be removed at any time for any reason. And then someone else said, beyond that, let's make sure that if the new administrator issues an award, the Attorney General can veto that award.
So to be clear, for the public who may be watching this and may not be familiar with all the intricacies of this situation, do you think, were you removed? What is the proper language, in your opinion?
My job?
Because this was an independent position turned into a political appointee, and then in June, we reported that you were likely out, though the Attorney General at the time said that you were still running the fund. So what exactly is it? Were you removed from your position? Did you leave the position?
My position was taken from me. So when they amended the statute effective July 1, suddenly the arbitrator administrator, the guy who could make decisions, who could actually decide cases, and who could stay in that job unless there was good cause to remove that person, namely me. On July 1, the job that I held was now as a recommender. I could sit in hearings, watch you unload in a trauma-informed way, and then make a recommendation of what the results should be. If the AG agreed with me and you wanted to take it, you could. But if you wanted to take what the new administrator decided and the AG said, we're not doing that, you wouldn't get it. And the new job, so-called, was in a different branch of government. I was a judicial branch employee. Now they're moving me to the executive branch. They're taking away my protections for cause. They're taking away my duties as a decider. And the job's going to last 7 weeks because Kellyanne's going to replace me. That's what the Attorney General said. You can stay there until she replaces you. And I said, wait a minute, I didn't sign up for that job. I'm not chattel. You can't just trade me around. I had a job that I took. I accepted the job. I'm proud of the job my staff and I did. But I didn't sign up for that job. And I've learned a lot about trauma, Ariel. This whole process is trauma-informed, victim-centered. The process they've created is trauma-inducing. Imagine you're a person who's been abused at the YDC, and you have a good case. But the Attorney General, for whatever reason, they don't have to describe why, so the administrator issues a decision to you, and he gets a copy the same day, and you say, oh, thank God, it's over, I'll take it, done. The AG said, no, we don't agree. How would you feel? In the system I was running, if you wanted to take the award, you could take it and that'd be the end of it. It's like putting a bag of groceries in front of a starving person and you say, thank God I won't be hungry tonight. And the AG says, no, I want the bag back. I don't want to be a part of that. The state of New Hampshire is better than that. And the reason I'm here, the reason I'm talking about it, it's not going to change my life. But what is happening is so unfair. It's borderline cruel what's happening. And you notice the governor never says anything about it. She doesn't want you to know she put in no money. She congratulates me that...
Yeah, have you had a conversation with the governor or the Attorney General's office when the announcement of your leaving this position was made? She commended you for your service and your commitment to mental health. But have you had any conversation throughout this process with her?
Not for lack of trying. I've known the governor for years, not well, but I've known her. And when she was in the Senate, I had lunch with her one day in the Senate dining room. I don't have an axe to grind against Governor Ayotte. And so when she came in and said in February of this year, I don't want any money in the budget, even though $75 million was promised each of those years, I wrote her a note and said, Governor, you're going to be getting my quarterly reports now, and if you ever want to sit down, I'd love to do that. A month later, I got a letter back. It was almost like Dear Occupant, but it had my name in there. And she said, I'd be happy to meet with you at the appropriate time. That was March 18th. Apparently the appropriate time never happened. If you were acting in good faith on this fund, which has been a wonderful solution to a scandalous 50 years, wouldn't you want to meet with the administrator to say, so what do you think? How do you think it's working? What changes do you think we should make? I'm having trouble with it. Maybe I'm not going to fund it. What's your best argument? I wrote her letters, never heard.
So are you suggesting the governor is not acting in good faith here and is trying to push this essentially down the road?
How in the world can you set up a fund to compensate people who've been abused over a half a century, invite all these people to come in, entice them to come in, and then with no courtesy of talking to the person who's been running the fund, put zero in your budget? And what she said after that, I remember reading in the Globe and I thought, my God. She said, I want to be fair to these people, but I don't want all the money going to the lawyers. The amount of money that goes to lawyers is set by the statute. I didn't write the statute. And it's hard to be fair to people when you have no money in the budget for them. I mean, I think we ought to just be honest. What the state should be saying is, look, we can't afford the fund anymore. And sorry you all came, but we're not going to do it anymore. Or you can just negotiate directly with the Attorney General's office. Don't go through this charade of a hearing. They didn't do that either. So they're going to keep the facade that this is fair and impartial. Why did the legislature put in the statute, we want a neutral, independent person to decide these cases with the power to, why did they do that? And why did they suddenly, the 11th hour, change it. I mean, it seems to me the question answers itself. No one has given me a reason, Ariel. It's not about me, it's about the people they're going to harm. They needed to get rid of the neutral, independent person who would stand up to do the right thing. They tried to get rid of me, tried to blame me, shame me, bribe me. And when I wouldn't go, they had no choice. I'd say, okay, we got to get rid of the guy somehow. Why would they do that? Do you think they want to pay more money to these people? Do they want to pay them the same amount? Why would they do this? They don't.
Well, some of the criticism of the fund has been, how does the state afford this? Is this going to make the state go bankrupt? It's a lot of money. It is a lot of money. How does the state afford this in the end?
Well, when they passed the statute, the state knew, the legislature knew the state and its budget better than anybody else. They didn't say we can't afford it. $75 million a year. They knew what they were doing. They knew what they were promising. By the way, states can't go bankrupt. No state can go bankrupt because they can always raise money. They can tax people. They can borrow money. I said one day to the Senate Finance Chairman, Mr. Chairman, the problem here is not that you can't find the money. You don't have the willpower to find it. These are people we abused when they were children. I don't know about you, but it's a moral outrage in my mind. And notice this year, the governor found money, I think $37 million, for Group 2 retirees, EMTs, fire, and police. And I'm sure they deserved it. Their retirement system was changed in 2011. So I'm sure that was a wrong, and she was going to right it. But in any world that I'm from, that I grew up in, if you can make it up a little bit to police and fire, and EMTs, who I admire, by the way, or you can take care of people who you raped and abused, is that a hard call? She found $37 million this year for those folks. Nothing for the people who they had abused. So the real shame here is not how can they find the money. The question is, how did they do this for 50 years? How did this go on in this state for 50 years? The people that they abused are now full adults. Their lives oftentimes have been broken. I'm not blaming the YDC and all of it. But how would you feel, Ariel? Finally, the state says, you're right, we're going to make it right to you, we're going to have an independent, neutral person, we're going to live by whatever he or she says. And they do that for 2 years. And then the 11th hour, no notice to anyone, no public hearing, no courtesy call to me or the claimants or their lawyers, and they change it. How would you feel? And now the person who's going to give you justice is the person who raped you? I mean, I just don't even understand why this isn't an outrage for the entire state of New Hampshire. I'm not an apologist for these kids, but I know they didn't cause their own rapes. They didn't cause their own oral rapes or vaginal rapes. They didn't ask for that. We did that. The state did. Don't we have an obligation to them? It's not that they can't do it. They won't do it. And they're going to paper it over, look like everything's fine. If the people of New Hampshire want to accept that, they can. But I'm just saying, as someone who's been in the justice business for a long, long time, this is so wrong.
Do you think these victims will ever get justice now that the system has changed?
No, I don't, by the way. Here's the dilemma these people are in. They knew when they came into the system that the legislature created, don't forget, I gave them credit. I think it was fabulous. Painful to be in, but it was the right thing. At least when they had a hearing, they knew that they would get an award, or they wouldn't, but they knew a neutral party would decide it. And it was over. Most of them accepted it. Now they're going to come into a system that they know is rigged. The state gets to decide everything. Think about that. And if they don't take the award, what are their options? I can wait 8 years for a jury trial. Time is the state's best friend. And some of these people will be dead. They'll have moved away. They'll have lost interest. They may be in jail. We abused them for 50 years. We finally said, no, come on in. We've changed. We understand. And now we're going to say, well, a little change. We're going to decide whether we accept what you're saying and how much we're going to give you. We don't want a neutral, independent person to do that. What is the state afraid of? And why won't they tell you the truth? Which is because we can control that. They have 100% control now. In what world does that make sense if you're the abused party?
Explain that.
When they came into the hearing with us, I was empowered by the legislature to decide their case. The AG could make arguments to me. They could submit things in writing, and they did. The lawyers for the claimants could make arguments to me, and they did. I was like a judge in that way. But then it was my call. And I didn't just randomly pick a number. I followed the state's statute, their guidelines, their worksheets. I never knew what I was giving until my assistant told me what the math was. So they could trust that the guy who was there was listening, was independent and neutral. Would you believe that from the state that abused you? Hey, we're being fair to you. Every time, Ariel, in these hearings, which could be really intense, I would say at the beginning of the hearing, I never worked for the YDC. I don't know anyone who ever worked there. And while I respect the Attorney General's office of the state, I said that every time, I don't report to them in that way. I'm a free spirit here. I make my own calls. I have an obligation to do that. And I will be neutral and independent. I don't know what that means for you, but I can tell you this. If I couldn't be neutral and independent, I would not be sitting here. And they all appreciated that. And that's the value of it. It's like going into a courtroom with your case and you're arguing to the judge and the defendant who you sued tells you what your verdict is. I mean, how can we possibly think that's fair? And the governor of this state knows that. She was the Attorney General, for heaven's sake. She clerked on the Supreme Court. She's a smart, successful lawyer. The Attorney General, who started the fund, has walked away from it.
If you were sitting in front of the governor or you were sitting in front of the Attorney General, what would you say to either of them?
I'd say you know better. You know better than that. You know that's not fair. If that were the system in a courtroom, they'd shut the courtroom down. Look, nobody wanted to have these kids abused, other than the people who were abusing them. But the people of the state were innocent about it. I don't fault the people of the state. Nobody could have believed it. I mean, I sit in those rooms and it's horrific what went on there. Do you realize there was bestiality there? There were people anally raped with electric cattle prods. It wasn't like the kids are going to bed without TV. Do you realize kids had to defecate and urinate in their cells?
How did, for people listening, how did the state allow this to happen? Was the state unaware that this was happening? And to be clear, I mean, how old were these people? These are teenagers, correct?
They were 13, 14, 15. And a lot of them, Ariel, it came from really broken beginnings, really broken beginnings. And so oftentimes there was nobody coming to visit. And if you're a pedophile, that's pretty good to know. And oftentimes these kids would be threatened by the staff. If you tell anyone, you're going to be here till you're 25, don't you dare tell anyone. You're lying. They'll think you're lying. You ended up here. They're going to believe you. The abuse that went on there is horrendous. And all the people who tell you they know everything and they're lying, they haven't attended one hearing. They haven't read one claim packet. I don't have any vested interest in it. I believe in justice and truth, and it's being camouflaged here by people who know better. And so my message to the people of the state, I love New Hampshire. We are better than this. If I never went back to that job, pick somebody else to be neutral and independent, but don't pretend that this is okay. It's not okay. And they had it okay. They worked for it for 2 years. It was within the estimates of what it would cost. And now they want to change it so they can control 100% of it. If you don't suspect that something's wrong, something's wrong.
And ultimately, we reported back in June there's approximately 2,000 claims that were filed, correct?
But I think that's close to true.
Close, and so 380 of them you said were resolved by all of you.
Yes.
3 were done outside of the, outside of your system.
Yes.
If critics would say, how many of the people, of all the cases that you heard, were there any that you thought were potentially lying or were potentially just in it to get money here?
Maybe one. I
So
mean,
you believe, of just one of all of them, you believe that these people are telling the truth?
ask the Attorney General how many people are prosecuted. They see what I see. They read what I read. Look, it's easy to say, I didn't watch the O.J. Simpson trial. I might have been the only American who didn't. And people would say to me afterwards, do you think he was guilty? I'd say, I don't know, I wasn't there. I didn't listen to him. I don't know. How people can say to you, they're lying. You know why they say that? Because they think New Hampshire couldn't do that. Why do you think they're prosecuting 11 pedophiles? Because it didn't happen? Because these kids are lying? And that isn't the universe of people who abuse these kids. They just start prosecuting these people for a long time. So maybe it's a salve. So people say, well, our states, but that could have happened. They're all lying. And by the way, you know, they're not highly successful people. Some of them are in jail. So what, is it okay to rape people who have a tough childhood? Is it okay to rape people who are addicts later in their life? I don't think so. I was on the court system. You know the old notion, justice is blind? It's blind for a reason. And so I never, sitting in these rooms, could read the things. These were open people that say, I've been an addict or been in jail. Should I say what, therefore you couldn't have been raped? Anyone who thinks that without any notice or knowledge is just kidding themselves. What happened on River Road here and somewhat in Concord was shocking to me. Went on for 50 years. And so people say, oh, come on, it's New Hampshire. That's what I thought. The people of the state are so much better than what went on. The last thing I want to say, which bothers me greatly. Governor Ayotte, if she was quoted correctly, was asked recently if she was going to apologize for the abuse. If I were governor of the state, that'd be the best day I could ever have. I would say to anyone who proves they were abused, sexually or physically, in one of those facilities, I apologize. It wasn't your fault. We're better than that as a state, and we're going to do what we can to make it right. You know what she said? Apologies are not on the table right now. When is a good time? What do you need to know? I don't know. I find the whole thing appalling. And I say that as someone who's devoted his professional life to trying to do the right thing in the right way. The people of the state are more like me than that. And so I hope, my goal is enough people will say, wait a minute, you're not doing that in our names. Don't put our name on that package. We want you to change it. And right now, Ariel, the new administrator hasn't even been nominated. There's been no hearing of this new rigged system. People could say, no, hold on. We're not doing that. If you have to have a special legislative session, come back. Reach out to the governor's office. Reach out to legislators. Unless you think this is okay. Unless you think I'm here today just making this up. I'm one of a handful of people in the States that sat in those rooms. And these people are many times voiceless people. I'm not. I want justice. I don't know what that's going to look like in individual cases, but I know I would have no respect if this other system goes into effect.
I guess that's my last question, which would be, what do you think happens next? And what would be your hope for what happens?
What I think happens next is that the new system will go into effect. People will remember it and say, well, I don't know, I can't get involved in that. And we'll eventually get rid of this case and these people. That's what I think will happen. What do I hope will happen? That there'll be enough people in this state who hear this, if they do, and say, I don't think the guy's making that up. Why would he do this? You think this is a great place for me to find myself? Saying the governor and the attorney general and the legislature of the state have committed a moral failure? Think I'd dream about doing that? I wouldn't be here, Ariel, if I didn't feel strongly about it. And so I hope enough people will say, I agree with that guy. Why is that happening? We abuse those people. We let 380 of them go through the system, and now the next people are going to get a different system. Why? Why did they need to get rid of the independent neutral person? Why? And why won't they tell you? Because they know why. And I am just so disappointed in the leadership right now in this state. Not even a political statement. It wouldn't matter to me. The chairman of Senate Finance, so people know this, I was in his office one day and he was saying, we can't seem to find the money. And I said, no, don't say that. Say you don't have the willpower to find it. I said, Senator, what you're about to do is immoral. You entice these people in, we abuse these people, they took you at your word, and now you're going to do this? He sat back and he said, well, you're preaching to the converted. I said, Senator, don't tell me that. If you believe that, don't be mute. When you go to the next hearing, say, we can't do this. This isn't right. Don't tell me here you agree with me that it's immoral, and then go commit the immorality. That's what I'm hearing up there. I'm for you. I believe in this, and so we have to vote.
One victim of the who says he was abused up in Concord told us not long ago that he feels like he's being betrayed by the state all over again with this switch to remove you and to no longer have an independent.
He's 100% right. Look, I don't put myself in that category. I feel betrayed myself. I didn't apply for the job. I took the job because they promised me this is what it would be. I built it with a great staff. We were doing a great job, and then suddenly one day, bang, it's gone. And Governor Ayotte has the chutzpah to say, he resigned. Give me a break. I didn't resign. Think I don't know how to write a letter that says I resigned? You won't find a letter like that from me. And then congratulated me for my distinguished service. Come on. If I was so distinguished at the YDC, I'd still be there today. Why did she say that? Put a bow on it, make it look good. I feel angry for these people. Whatever they're entitled to, if anything, I don't know, I haven't heard the cases yet. But just to dismiss them like this and say, no, everything's the same. No, not.
I guess to put a fine point on things, why would they want to remove you, in your opinion? Why?
Because I was doing the job. And in other words...
And why would they not want you in there doing the job?
Because I was following the statute they wrote, which is now too rich. Governor Ayotte said zero money. She didn't say put half the amount in. She didn't put nothing in. Now, they knew if I stayed there, they were trying to get rid of me so there'd be a vacancy. And then they could have said, well, he's resigned and might as well redesign it now. The last thing they wanted was me standing there when they took my job away. And now that my job's gone, they can pick their own person, control 100% of the Elko. I mean, think about that. The person who did the raping is going to tell you what you can get. You think that's fair? I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm living in a different universe, but I've been in the court system my whole life. I'm just saying to you, not only is that not fair, it doesn't even have the close proximity of fairness. And they're doing it in our name. It's not my name. That's why I'm here today. I'm not speaking for me. But they are speaking for our people here in New Hampshire. And I think the world of the state and the people here. I know they're better than that. I know they're better than that. And if I'm right, they'll start saying something, reaching out, speaking up. When you abuse kids for a half century, it costs money. And the state should be doing the right thing. They were until recently.
Justice Broderick, anything else you would want to share today?
No, I'm so appreciative, Ariel, of the opportunity to be here. This is not how I anticipated ending my professional career. Not at all. But I couldn't be more proud to end it this way. If this is the last professional job I have, we finished the race, we did it well, my staff was great. And I want the people in New Hampshire to know that we had a fair system, wasn't perfect, I'm not perfect, but it was fair. We now have a system that everyone up there who's got a vested interest in saving a buck says, oh, it's the same. It's not. So the stain on the state for 50 years was hugely embarrassing. We fixed it. We're staying it again. That's what I want people to know.
Thank you. We really appreciate you sitting down with us.
Thank you.